Thank you, Rakesh. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. So, through the course of one hour, I will be showing you how simple it is to help you manage your change management process to make it more efficient with the help of advanced analytics. So, before that, let's see why it is important for you to strategize and have a well defined change management plan. So, roughly speaking, there are three important reasons why you should actually focus on building this plan. One is you need a change management plan to help you offer reliable IT services because the uh, the goal of any enterprise is to make sure that it is able to deliver its services on time. Rather, it needs to improve its IT service delivery and obviously satisfy the customer's requirements. Optimum and efficient IT service delivery is number one. The second thing is, as your enterprise grows, you need to make sure that you adapt to the changes in your IT infrastructure according to your business needs. Now, for a growing enterprise, you find that you will keep adding more and more applications and services to it, which means you will be making more changes, encountering a lot more changes, which also means you need to have an idea on how you have to manage these changes. And this is where your change management strategy comes into play. The third thing is you need to manage your changes more efficiently to minimize the possibility of a risk and reduce outages. Sometimes an unplanned change can affect an application or a service that is associated with a particular change, and this causes a service outage, which is a nightmarish experience for any enterprise. So you need to reduce that risk factor. Yeah. So now let's get started. Now, for the purpose of helping you use analytics to help you build a better change management strategy, I'll take you through our product, ManageEngine Analytics Plus, our self-service advanced analytics solution. You will see how easy it is to analyze your data by building reports and dashboards pretty easily. So I'll just now get started by showing you a few use cases which will help you make a plan to manage your changes better. Okay. So the first scenario is, how do I create a timeline of a change request? John, who's an employee at Zilka Inc., is worried about this, and he says that I've requested to update the firmware on my router. Just how long will it take for my request to be approved and to be finally implemented? Because John doesn't really know how exactly the change process works, as in he doesn't really get visibility into that, he is frustrated, and this is a very valid concern for any employee. So, what we can do to help out John is to create a timeline of a change request. Help him understand exactly how long it takes for such similar requests to be approved and to be implemented. So to do that, I'll take you through the product now. So I just go back to the product, and this is the UI. So for this purpose, I've actually constructed a query table. As you can see, it's named timeline based on the change request table that you see. This change request table is same as the change table that you get to see once you integrate Service Desk Plus with Analytics Plus. I've just made a copy of the same table and used it to demonstrate the reports just for the purpose of this webinar. And I'll be using this table to construct my report. So I'll just go here, click on New Chart View, and I just need to drag and drop the necessary fields on this report builder, and I get my report. So here what I require is the reason for change on the x-axis, the average completion time, and the approval time. So here I just change the approval time to average, and I click here to generate my graph. I'll just save my report now and generate my graph. Okay, so I can actually change the visualization type in the graph. I can change it to a line chart, bar chart, but for the purpose of analysis, I'll just retain the stack bar chart. The average completion time marked in green, and the average approval time is in red. So John's request for change, which involves updating the firmware on his router, should be under technology upgrades. And I can see that the average approval time for the request is around 8 hours and the completion time is around 316 hours. I'll just drill down to this based on subject. I can say that it takes around 6 hours for John's change to be approved and 266 hours for the change to be finally executed. Now, drilling down into this has helped me confirm exactly how long it takes for John's specific change to be actually executed, and this helps John in many ways. For example, he doesn't really have to wait around to find out how long it's going to take his change to be approved or to be finally put into action. He can, in this way, he can actually plan for his changes much in advance, and because he already has an average estimate of how long it takes for it to finally be executed. John is now finally happy and he feels that he doesn't have to play any more waiting games. Okay, now with that, we move on to the second scenario. Emergency changes. Are there too many of them? Catherine, who's the IT service manager of Zilka Inc., is worried that there have been too many emergency changes that have been lodged. And she wonders if most of them are even required to be an emergency change. So, what are emergency changes? Let's look at that first. Emergency changes include those changes that probably need to be implemented uh, with immediate effect. For example, when you need to resolve a major security incident or a denial of service attack, you will have to implement a set of changes, probably run a few security patches or modify your router configuration or something like that. And all of these changes need to be done with immediate effect without having to go through any prior approval. And these changes are lodged as an emergency change. Let's see how Catherine can make use of analytics to determine the number of emergency changes that were lodged and take steps to minimize them. Okay, so now I'll just go to the product. Uh, okay, so now we need to help Catherine out. So for that, what I do is I go to the change request table that you can see here and I create the necessary report. So to view the trend of emergency changes, what I do is I first drag and drop the reason for change in the x-axis and sorry, just a second. The reason for change is on the x-axis. Then I add the change ID, the count of it, on the y-axis. And in the filter section, I add the emergency field. And here I select yes. I click here to generate the graph. And it's a bar chart, so I change it to a pie chart here. And I save my report. Okay, and here, okay, so I can see that there are several reasons for change in terms of the emergency changes that were lodged, ranging from antivirus updates to new services, patch updates, productivity improvements, security compliance, and of course technology upgrades. Now, for example, let's assume that Catherine actually wants to see the number of antivirus and firewall updates. So here I can see that it constitutes about 17% of the total pie. And let's now try drilling down and getting more information on that. So here I drill down by urgency. And here you can see that the changes have been categorized based on how immediately it needs to be made effective. It ranges from can wait, with immediate need, urgent, very urgent. So let's see the number of changes that can wait, because that will probably give Catherine an idea how to get started and minimize these changes first. So here I see that there are 28 changes that can wait, and what I do is I just click on view underlying data to see what those changes are. So these are some of the changes, which include the inability to access data from file server, access to databases, data center access, downloading file from an external website. So we see that this is probably the result of certain firewall updates or antivirus updates that have not gone out periodically. Now that Catherine has this information, she actually can chalk out a plan to make sure that there is a way to periodically keep checking if these updates are going out regularly. And this way, she can actually reduce the number of emergency changes that will be raised. This way, she can optimize her service desk operations too. All right. So now we see how, in a very short span of time, she has managed to create a report that has given her the necessary information about emergency changes, and also has helped her make a decision on how she needs to take things forward. So let's see. Let's just go back now. And let's see what Katrin says. So Katrin seems pretty happy again, and she says by implementing regular checks on software updates, I can bring down the count of emergency changes significantly. So that's it for the second scenario. Now let's go to the third one. Okay, this is the third scenario. Are your technicians feeling the pinch? So Katrin is worried that due to the high volume of incoming change requests, her technicians may be unable to meet their workload. But she wants to find out if there is an actual correlation between the two parameters. That is, one, the volume of incoming change requests, and the average request resolution time. So for this, what we do is I have actually created a query table by combining data from both the request and change tables. As mentioned earlier, it's pretty easy to actually create a query table with the help of Analytics Plus. So here what I do is I go here and I click on New Chart View, and the report builder appears, and I go ahead and start creating my chart. So the two parameters that I need to test here are the average request resolution time and the volume of change requests. And I add time as my base. So here I add time on the x-axis. I add average request resolution time here, and the volume of change requests here. And I click here to generate my graph. I go ahead and I merge the axis, and I save my report. Okay, I click on view mode, and here is my graph. So ideally, if Catherine's theory has to be correct, uh, it means that every time there is an increasing volume of change requests, the average resolution time will also go up, and vice versa. Now, technically, her fears are not completely confounded, because she feels that, obviously, she feels that generally, when there is a high volume of change requests and her technicians are unable to meet their workload, it would perhaps affect the efficiency of her service desk. Okay, now coming back to the graph, we can see that the line marked in the line marked in green indicates the volume of change requests, and the one marked in red, the pointers indicate the value of average resolution time. You can just go and see from May, there is a big dip in June and then July, and it picks up from then on. So if you can take a look at this from June, July, there is an increase, and slowly there is also an increase from June to July. The average resolution time increases from 6 hours to 15 hours. Similarly, in August, there's another increase, and let's look at the increase from July to August. And yes, there is an increase that is around 18 hours, but there is a dip in September. So does their resolution time also decrease? Yes, it does. It decreases to 15 hours. Now we've reached a point in the graph where there is a huge increase in the number of requests in September from September to October. So in September you had around 94 requests, and in October it goes up to 199. So here we see that in September we already saw that the average request resolution time is 15 hours. In October it's almost doubled. So throughout this part of the graph, and in fact even more so if you keep continuing to see this, you see that there is a linear relationship between these two parameters, and it's established by significantly this part of the graph where you see there is almost a 2x increase in the volume of change requests and an almost similar increase in the average request resolution time. So it's perhaps safe for Catherine to conclude that there is a very tight relationship between these two parameters, and they are closely related. And perhaps whenever she sees an increase in the volume of change requests, she needs to make sure that either the tickets are distributed or add more technicians to meet the incoming workload. All right, so let's just go back to the presentation. And that's what she says. Now I clearly know that it does affect the productivity to a pretty large extent, and I've got some reorganizing to do. This is an example of how analytics in your help desk can help you test your hypothesis, predict trends, and also help you establish correlation between two parameters. And this definitely goes a long way in helping you make your business decisions. Okay, now let's move on to the fourth scenario. Fourth scenario, uh, the question that we need to answer is, how do I categorize changes based on business risk? Marcus, who's the CIO of Zilka Inc., says, I keep wondering if there are too many open changes that would put my business at risk. I need a report to help me out. Now, the problem is when you have too many changes in your help desk, like we spoke about improving the service desk efficiency, the one thing that you need to do is to prioritize which changes to take up. And one way of actually doing that is by categorizing them or by viewing a distribution of these changes based on how much of a threat they pose to your business. I'll just go ahead and show you how you can create a report to help Marcus out. Okay, so I'll just go back to the product and let's open the change request table, and I go and create my report using this. So here, what do I need? I need just one simple field, which is the risk field. I add it to the y-axis. Now I also add it to the color field. In the filter section, I will add the stage field, and I'll exclude those requests that have been closed already. I click here to I click here and I get my graph, and I just go ahead and change the chart type now. Changes to a ring chart, and I go ahead and save my report. So yeah. Okay, so now I have my chart in front of me, and it shows a very clear split up of the changes that have been categorized based on risk. So Blue indicates number of changes that are under medium risk, red obviously for high risk, and green indicates the ones that potentially are low risk. For instance, right now I've categorized them based on risk, and let's say I want to know the number of high risk changes, let's say in Cape Town. So I just drill down by site, and I see that 19.2% of high risk changes have been categorized under Cape Town, for instance. All right, and I go back, and suppose I want to view them by, let's say, impact. So I just type impact here, and I see that around 33% of these same high risk changes have significant business impact. 30% of them, the one marked in green, indicate significant impact towards the department side, and 37% of these high-risk changes affect the user. Now, there's another way. Suppose I want to see the distribution of these changes based on risk and also some other parameters. Let's say I want to view them based on impact or based on site or based on even the request group. Instead of drilling down from each section of the graph, I can actually I can actually add something called user filters here. So if you look at this here, for example, I could add site, I could add, let's say, the group, and also impact. You can keep adding as many user filters as you want and keep filtering the data by selecting either one or all of these options and get more information in a single report. So let's say I click here, I save the report again, and I click on view mode, and here suppose I click on admin team. I get to see the distribution of changes, all high, low, medium, everything based on changes that have been categorized under the admin team group. Let's say I want to see changes under the admin team group that also affects business. So I get a different distribution. For example, 26% of high risk changes that have come under the request group, that have come to the admin team request group, have significant impact on your business. I'm sorry. And also, let's say I drill down by the site, Cape Town. 50% of low risk changes from Cape Town from the admin team group affect business. So in this way, it's pretty easy for markets to actually drill down to many factors within the same report, probably even find out changes based on department or group wise that have high risk, low risk, that have significant user or business impact. And let's say if Marcus finds out that a certain department, let's say the client relations department, has too many high risk changes and they also have a high impact on the business, all he needs to do is come up with a plan to expedite those changes, to roll them out faster. And this way, he also can make sure that his enterprise is less at a risk, and also be satisfied that he made the right decision at the right time. So that's what he says. Wow, this really helps and puts things in a better perspective. Okay, now let's move on to the final scenario. How many overdue change requests are there? So Catherine says that she wants to view the status of overdue change requests based on the technician. So it'll give her an idea about the technician workload and also tell her how productive they are. Okay, so let's help her create this report. Okay, so what I need to do is I have the change request table here. So I just go ahead and I click on new chart view. And for this report, I need the count of change ID in the y-axis. I need the change owner field in the x-axis. Let's say that Katrin also wants to see the stage-wise distribution of changes under each change owner. So what I mean is, for example, if under a particular technician A, she wants to see how many changes are in the planning stage or approval stage or implementation stage, etc. So here for that, I just add the stage column in the color field, and because she wanted to see the number of overdue requests, I add that here as well. Overdue status yes, and let's say even in the stage column I'll just exclude the number of requests that have been closed. And in the user filters, to help her analyze this report better, let's also add a couple of filters like impact or group, category, etc. So it will help her drill down to the data better. So add that. So here my graph has been generated. I just change this to a stacked bar chart first, and then I save it for now. Okay, so I have my graph right now. Just click on view mode, and I sort the graph so it looks better. Now what I do is to make this easier for Katrin. So I'll make sure that the number of changes are listed based on each stage that they are in. So the count of change ID, as you can see, can be listed here. So I'll just clean the report, help her clean up the report a little bit, make it look a little better. So here, instead of writing change ID count, I would just change this to number of change requests, and here I show the corresponding y-axis value as data label on the chart, and that's it. So for instance, I can see that Roger Wright has 2 changes that are in the submission stage, 6 that are in the review stage, 5 in planning, 5 implementation, and 2 that have been approved. Let's say that for Roger Wright there are around 20 changes that are overdue, and I can see the split up of these changes based on which uh, stage of change process that they are in. Now I can also drill down based on the user filters that you've added here. So if I want to see based on admin team, I can see that the change owners include Howard Stern, Sean Adams, etc. I can see that Howard has around 2 stages that are in the planning stage and 3 that are in the review stage. For instance, I can also drill down based on category. So it's pretty easy to do this. Raja has 1 change relating to the administrative category, which is under planning stage, and 1 that is in the submission stage. So in this way, she actually gets a very clear idea about the number of such overdue changes, who is responsible for these changes, what category they belong to, any significant business impact, and also what stage that they are in. Now, this helps her to actually, again, like the previous report that I showed you, she can probably drill down based on how the priority. She could also add priority here if she wanted as one of the filters here, and she can drill down based on that or based on impact, or any of the user filters that she's added here. Make sure that these changes are rolled out faster. Whichever changes hold higher value based on each of the categories or each of these filters that she's looking for, and she knows who is responsible for what change under them, and perhaps instruct them to get this rolling faster. Okay. So details about the ownership of the change request gives me better insight into the change management process. That's what she says. And this is another step towards her improving her desk efficiency. Uh, with that, we've actually reached the end of this webinar. So through this webinar, I hope that you were able to get some insight into how you can manage your changes and take control of them, plan out a better change management strategy. These five simple scenarios are something that I'm sure you can relate to, and I hope that you perform similar analysis as well. And do let us know how it goes. Yes, so if you have any questions related to the webinar, you can actually type in the chat window in the GoToWebinar console, and I'll answer them right away. But if you would also like to send me an email and discuss further about this or provide any feedback about the webinar, you can send me an email at pritika.r@zohocop.com, and I'll be happy to reply to all of them. So thank you everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and attending this. I think we can get started with the Q&A session now.